A routine traffic stop turns into a career-ending nightmare. A racist cop thinks he has all the power until he pulls over the wrong man. What happens next will shock you. Watch till the end. Like and subscribe for more gripping stories. The traffic stop that changed everything. The city of Sacramento was bathed in golden hues as the sun dipped below the skyline. The streets bustled with commuters trying to make it home before darkness swallowed the city. But for Michael Carter, tonight was supposed to be just another drive home. His midnight black luxury sedan purred softly as it glided through traffic. The leather-wrapped steering wheel felt smooth under his hands, and the faint hum of a jazz station played in the background. After a long day at the Internal Affairs Division, this drive was his moment of peace. That peace shattered in an instant. Flashing lights, blaring siren. The pulse of red and blue exploded in his rearview mirror. Michael exhaled through his nose, hands tightening on the wheel. He had done nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing. But he already knew what was coming. He signaled, pulled over smoothly to the curb, and let the engine idle. His heartbeat remained steady, not from lack of concern, but from years of experience. This was not his first rodeo. Through the mirror, he watched as the patrol car came to an aggressive stop. The officer inside sat there for an unusually long moment. That wasn't standard protocol. They were sizing him up. Michael knew the drill. Step 1. Play it cool. He rolled down the window, kept his hands visible on the wheel, and stared straight ahead. Don't make sudden moves. Don't give them a reason. The driver's side door of the patrol car creaked open. Step 2. Read the body language. A tall, broad-shouldered cop stepped out, his posture a little too rigid, a little too eager. His short, buzzed hair, tense jawline, and tight grip on his belt told Michael everything he needed to know. This wasn't just a traffic stop. This was something else. The nameplate on his chest read, Officer Ryan Mitchell. Mitchell approached with deliberate slowness, his boots clapping against the asphalt. As he reached the driver's side window, his gaze hovered on Michael just a second too long before speaking. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation, no. Good evening, sir. Michael kept his expression neutral. He reached for the glove compartment slowly, carefully, deliberately, retrieved his registration, and handed it over along with his license. Mitchell didn't even look at them. Not yet. Instead, the officer's eyes remained fixed on Michael himself. Not the paperwork, not the car, but him. Step 3. Recognize the script. Michael had seen it before. Hell, he'd investigated cases just like this. First, they find an excuse to pull you over. Then they fish for a reason to escalate. They don't need you to be guilty. They just need you to look guilty. And Mitchell was already playing the game. You in a hurry tonight? Michael held back a smirk. The question wasn't real. It was bait. Stay calm. Stay in control. Just heading home. Michael answered smoothly. Mitchell nodded, but it wasn't a gesture of acknowledgement. It was the nod of a man who had already decided something. His eyes flicked down to the license in his hand. Then his smirk deepened. You're not from around here, are you? There it was, the second stage of the game. Michael's patience thinned, but he kept his voice steady. I've been here for a few months. My address is on the license. Mitchell barely glanced at it, because it didn't matter. He wasn't interested in where Michael lived. He was interested in where Michael didn't belong. Step out of the vehicle. Michael went completely still. No reason. No probable cause, just a demand. He could push back. He could ask why. He had every legal right to refuse. But that was another part of the game. Push too hard and suddenly it's obstruction of justice. Push a little more, and now it's resisting arrest. This is how the system traps you. Michael's grip tightened briefly on the wheel. Then, with the grace of a seasoned chess player, he let go and opened the door. Step 4. Let them think they're winning. As he stepped out, Mitchell looked him up and down, as if searching for something to justify the growing tension. The suit, the polished shoes, the calm demeanor. Mitchell didn't like it. He wanted fear. He wanted submission. Instead, Michael Carter stood tall, and that made him dangerous. Mitchell's hand hovered just a little too close to his holster. The silent message was clear. Don't do anything stupid. Michael raised his hand slightly, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Let him feel in control. Let him think he has the upper hand. Because soon enough, that illusion would shatter. Mitchell jerked his chin toward the hood of the car. Hands where I can see them. Michael complied. Smooth. Controlled. Mitchell smirked. The smugness of a man who thought he had everything figured out. We've had some incidents in the area, he added, stepping closer. You can never be too careful. Michael turned his head slightly, locking eyes with him. Incidents involving men in business suits driving home from work? The question landed like a punch. For just a split second, Mitchell's mask slipped. He straightened up, hands shifting toward his belt. Not because he needed to, but because it was instinct. A warning. A challenge. Michael did not blink. Then Mitchell's voice dropped lower, laced with something darker. You seem awfully confident. Michael tilted his head, his voice calm but razor-sharp. Confidence isn't the problem here, officer. Respect is. And that was when Mitchell truly started to lose control. He stepped closer, breaking personal space, invading territory. He was looking for a reason, a single reason. But Michael Carter had spent years dealing with men like him, and he was about to turn the tables. Mitchell tapped his fingers against his holster, and then, from his radio, a voice crackled to life. All units, be advised, suspect matching description of recent vehicle theft spotted in the area. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. He looked at Michael, then at the car, then back at Michael, and his smirk returned. Michael saw it happening in real time. Mitchell wasn't just stopping him anymore. He was about to arrest him for a crime he never committed. And just like that, the game had changed. Michael Carter wasn't just fighting against one bad cop. He was fighting against the entire system. And they had no idea who they were dealing with. The trap is set. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made your pulse pound in your ears. Michael Carter had been in tense situations before, but this one was different. This wasn't just a traffic stop anymore. This was a setup. And Officer Ryan Mitchell? He was enjoying every second of it. Mitchell's smirk was sharp, confident. His eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a man who thought he had already won. We've got a report of a stolen vehicle in the area. He flipped through Michael's registration papers slowly, deliberately, like he was searching for something, anything, that could justify what was about to happen next. Michael could feel the noose tightening. Mitchell was building his case, piece by piece, lie by lie. It didn't matter that Michael's car was legally registered in his name. Mitchell wasn't looking for the truth. He was looking for an excuse. And now he had one. Mitchell took a step closer, the weight of his presence pressing down. His hand hovered just a little too close to his holster. Michael didn't move, didn't even blink, because this was the moment everything could go wrong. One wrong move, one wrong word. And suddenly, Michael wouldn't just be a guy pulled over in a traffic stop. He'd be a suspect, a threat, a target. And Mitchell? He'd be the hero who stopped him. Michael had seen it play out before. Hell, he'd investigated cases just like this. And he was not going to be another name on that list. The second cop arrives. A sudden flash of red and blue reflected off the pavement as another patrol car screeched to a halt behind Mitchell's. Michael's stomach twisted. Backup. Mitchell had called for backup before he even stepped out of the car. That meant one thing. He planned this. Michael let out a slow breath. Stay calm. Stay in control. From the second car, a younger officer stepped out. Officer Daniels. Daniels looked less sure of himself. His posture wasn't as stiff, his eyes darting between Mitchell and Michael like he wasn't entirely convinced of what was happening. There was hesitation, doubt, and that was something Michael could use. Daniels stopped beside Mitchell, his brow furrowed. What's going on here? Mitchell smirked, gesturing toward Michael. Pulled him over for a traffic violation. Now we've got a report of a stolen vehicle in the area. Might be our guy. Daniel's eyes flickered to Michael. Michael held his gaze. Look, watch. See what's really happening. Daniels hesitated. Does the vehicle match the stolen report? Mitchell ignored the question. Step out of the car, he ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. Michael felt the trap closing. He had two choices: refuse, and suddenly he was obstructing an investigation; comply, and give Mitchell exactly what he wanted, the chance to escalate. Either way, he lost. Michael exhaled slowly. Fine. You want me out of the car? I'll get out. But you're not going to like what happens next. The escalation. Michael stepped out slowly, deliberately, keeping his hands visible. Mitchell's eyes flicked down to his suit, his polished shoes. None of it fit the suspect narrative, and that pissed him off. Mitchell took a step closer, invading Michael's space, testing him. Hands on the hood. Michael raised a brow. Why? Mitchell's jaw twitched. Because I said so. Michael didn't move. The power dynamic was shifting. Mitchell felt it, and he didn't like it. His fingers tapped against the grip of his holster, a silent warning. Daniels shifted uncomfortably. Shouldn't we? Mitchell cut him off. I don't need a damn lecture, Daniels. Just cover me. Daniels hesitated. He saw it now. This wasn't a routine stop. This was something else. Michael could feel the weight of the moment. This was where it could go bad, fast. If Mitchell decided he felt threatened, if he reached for his gun, if Daniels panicked, Michael would be on the ground in seconds, or worse. The lie that changes everything. Mitchell squared his shoulders, eyes gleaming with one last move to secure his win. We just got an update on the stolen vehicle report. Michael's stomach dropped. There was no update. Mitchell was lying. Description matches our guy here. Daniel's head snapped toward Mitchell. Wait, what? That's not what dispatch said. Mitchell turned on him, voice sharp. Are you questioning me? Daniel shut his mouth, but his eyes said everything. He knew. He knew this was wrong. Michael saw the hesitation, the inner conflict, and so he made a choice. He turned directly toward Daniels, ignoring Mitchell entirely. Officer Daniels, Michael said, voice steady, unshaken. Look me in the eyes and tell me this is right. Daniels froze. The silence was deafening. Michael pressed forward. Look at me. Look at him. Listen to what he's saying. Daniels' fingers twitched. His breathing changed. He was rethinking everything. Mitchell sensed it too, and he snapped. Turn around. Hands on the hood. Now. That was it. The final push. The breaking point. Michael exhaled. Then slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket. The moment that changes everything. Mitchell's hand flew to his gun. Daniels panicked. Wait! He's not... Mitchell drew his weapon. Don't move! Hands up! Now! Michael froze. The world slowed. His hand was still inside his jacket pocket. If he pulled it out too fast, if he moved the wrong way, this would end badly, very badly. Michael locked eyes with Mitchell, didn't blink. Then, his voice cut through the chaos. I'm reaching for my badge. Mitchell twitched. Michael's hand moved, slowly, deliberately, and then he pulled it out. A small black leather wallet, flipped it open. The badge gleamed under the streetlights, and then, in a voice so calm, so deadly quiet, that it shattered Mitchell's world. Michael spoke. Michael Carter, head of internal affairs, Sacramento Division. Mitchell stopped breathing. Daniels took a step back. Mitchell's hand dropped from his gun. His face went pale. He had just threatened the one man in the entire department who had the power to destroy his career. Michael stepped forward. Mitchell instinctively stepped back. Then Michael leaned in, his voice low, sharp as a blade. Now, Officer Mitchell, what were you saying about probable cause? The breaking point. The street was silent. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic, the occasional flicker of a neon sign buzzing against the cool Sacramento night air, and the shallow, shaky breathing of Officer Ryan Mitchell. He had just pulled his gun on the wrong man, because the man standing in front of him wasn't just some random black guy in a luxury sedan. Michael Carter was the head of internal affairs, the one man who decided whether cops like Mitchell kept their jobs or lost them. Michael watched Mitchell break in real time, his pupils shrinking, his fingers twitching, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. His power was gone. For the first time in this entire stop, Mitchell wasn't in control anymore. Michael took a slow step forward. Mitchell stiffened, his body screaming with tension. The arrogance, gone. The smirk, dead. The fake confidence, shattered. Daniels, the younger officer, was still frozen. His hand hovered near his belt, but his expression wasn't fear. It was realization. Daniels had seen the whole thing, and now he understood what had just happened. Mitchell had lied. He had escalated, and he had almost pulled the trigger. Daniel's eyes flickered between the badge in Michael's hand and the growing panic in Mitchell's. The truth was all over Mitchell's face now. Michael let the silence stretch, let it sink in. Then he spoke. "Do you have any idea how bad you just screwed up?" Mitchell's fingers twitched. He looked like he was about to say something, but stopped himself. Michael tilted his head. "No? Let me spell it out for you." He stepped even closer, forcing Mitchell to take a half step back. Mitchell had spent his whole career making people feel small, but tonight, it was his turn. "You profiled me." Michael's voice was razor sharp, each word slicing deeper. "You lied about a stolen vehicle match." Mitchell's face reddened. "You tried to frame me." Daniels blinked, his hands clenched into fists. Even he hadn't realized it was that bad. Michael's voice dropped even lower. "You pulled your gun on a man who did nothing wrong." The words hit Mitchell like bricks. His breath hitched. His hands shook. Michael exhaled sharply. "You're done, Mitchell." Mitchell's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "Listen, I didn't know who you were." Michael smirked. "There it is. The truth." He didn't regret what he did. He only regretted who he did it to. Michael's face hardened. "That's the problem, isn't it?" Mitchell flinched, because he knew exactly what Michael meant. Michael leaned in, lowering his voice. "If I was just another black man on the street, what would have happened tonight?" Mitchell said nothing, because the answer was too damn ugly to say out loud. Michael saw the cracks forming, but he wasn't done. He turned his attention to Daniels. "Officer Daniels." Daniels snapped to attention. "Sir?" Michael's voice was measured, firm. "What did you see tonight?" Daniels hesitated. He looked at Mitchell. Mitchell shook his head slightly. A warning. Michael caught it, and he did not like it. He stepped back, gaze locking onto Daniels. "Son, let me make something very clear." Daniels' spine straightened instinctively. "This is your moment." Daniels swallowed. "This is the moment you decide what kind of cop you're going to be." Mitchell's jaw tightened. He knew Michael was cutting straight through to Daniels' conscience. Michael continued. "Do you want to be the guy who stands by and lets this happen?" Daniels hesitated. Then, his hand dropped away from his belt, and Mitchell saw it. "Daniels," Mitchell snapped, "shut your mouth!" But Daniels didn't shut his mouth. For the first time since stepping out of that patrol car, Daniels stood his ground. "Sir," he said, voice shaking just slightly, "this wasn't right." Mitchell's head snapped toward him. "The hell did you just say?" Daniels took a deep breath, then another, and then he pulled out his own radio. Michael's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Interesting." Mitchell's face went pale. "Daniels, don't!" But Daniels was already pressing the call button. "Dispatch, this is Officer Daniels, badge number 44,327. I need a supervisor at my location. Now." Michael felt a flicker of satisfaction. Mitchell? He looked like he was about to throw up. He had lost. And worst of all, one of his own had just turned against him. Michael glanced at Mitchell. "Looks like you've got a problem, officer." Mitchell's fist clenched. He knew what was coming next, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The final nail in the coffin. The radio crackled again. "Supervisor en route." Michael smiled. Game over. Mitchell's eyes were wild now, desperate. He knew he was finished. He whipped back to Daniels. "You just killed your career, you little idiot." Daniels stood firm. Michael took one final step forward, and then, in a tone so calm, so deadly quiet, that it sent a chill down Mitchell's spine, he said, "No, Mitchell, you killed yours." And then, the sound of approaching sirens filled the night. The reckoning. The night air was thick with tension. Red and blue lights flashed across the dark pavement as another patrol car pulled up. This was it. This was the moment Officer Ryan Mitchell had lost everything. Michael Carter stood tall, his badge gleaming under the streetlights, watching as Mitchell's entire world came crashing down. And Mitchell knew it. His hands shook at his sides. His jaw was clenched so tight his teeth might crack. Because tonight, he wasn't in control. For the first time in his career, he was the one being watched, and he couldn't handle it. The supervisor arrives, a dark SUV pulled up to the scene. The door swung open. Lieutenant Greg Harrison, tall, gruff, the kind of cop who'd been around too long to take bullshit from anyone. His eyes swept over the scene, immediately sensing something was very wrong. Mitchell stiffened. "Lieutenant, I can explain." Harrison held up a hand. "Save it." His gaze landed on Michael. "Carter." His voice was careful, respectful. Michael gave him a slow nod. "Lieutenant." Harrison's eyes flicked to Daniels. The younger cop was tense but steady. And then finally, Harrison turned to Mitchell. "What the hell is going on here?" Michael stepped forward, and he told him every single detail. The profiling, the false accusations, the abuse of power, the gun being pulled, for absolutely no reason. Harrison didn't say a word. He just listened. And the longer he listened, the tighter his expression became. By the time Michael finished, the silence was suffocating. Mitchell looked desperate now, panicked. "He's lying," he spat. "He's twisting the whole damn thing. Enough!" Harrison's voice cut through the night like a blade. Mitchell shut his mouth so fast his teeth clicked. Harrison exhaled, running a hand over his face. This was bad, very bad, because it wasn't just Carter's word against Mitchell's anymore. Daniels was standing there too, and Daniels had seen it all. Harrison turned to the young officer. "Daniels, what happened?" Daniels swallowed hard. His face was pale. But then he spoke, and he told the truth. All of it. By the time he was done, Mitchell looked like a dead man walking. His mouth opened, but there was nothing left to say. Michael watched it happen. The moment Mitchell realized it was over, it was all over. Harrison let out a slow breath. Then in a voice that left no room for argument, he said, "Mitchell, hand over your badge and gun." The words hit like a bullet. Mitchell's entire body locked up. "You can't be serious." Harrison's stare hardened. "Now!" Mitchell's face twisted with rage. "I did nothing wrong." His voice cracked. "I was just doing my job." Michael stepped forward. "Number, you were abusing your power." Mitchell whipped around, eyes blazing. "You think you're better than me?" Michael's expression was cold, deadly calm. "No." He let the silence stretch. Then, "But I sure as hell am better than the man you've become." Mitchell's chest heaved. His face was burning red. But he had lost, and he knew it. With shaking hands, he unclipped his badge, pulled out his gun, and handed them both over. Harrison didn't say anything. He just took them. Then turning to Daniels, he said, "Escort him back to the station." Daniels nodded, but he didn't look at Mitchell, because Mitchell wasn't worth looking at anymore. Mitchell turned back to Michael one last time, and what Michael saw in his eyes wasn't anger anymore. It was fear, because Mitchell knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The aftermath. Michael drove home in silence. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind was racing. Tonight, Mitchell got what he deserved. But how many more were out there? How many more officers saw a black man in a nice car and made the same assumptions? How many more people hadn't been lucky enough to walk away from situations like this? Michael had power, influence, and tonight, he had seen exactly what needed to change. The next morning, he sat at his desk, flipping open a brand new case file. On the cover, Officer Ryan Mitchell, Internal Review. A knock on the door. His assistant, Linda, poked her head in. "Chief Daniels wants to see you." Michael nodded, closing the file. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Epilogue. 1 month later, a town hall meeting. Dozens of officers, community leaders, concerned citizens. Michael stood at the podium, and he spoke. "Justice isn't just about punishing bad cops." His voice carried through the room. It's about making sure the ones who wear this badge truly deserve to. A pause, then thunderous applause. Michael didn't smile because he knew this fight wasn't won. It was just getting started, and he wasn't stopping until the system finally changed for the better. For everyone. The rules had changed, and now it was time to make sure the law did too.